suddenly the nets are full and there's weight, and there's something about the power of Jesus to change lives that I think touches us. How many testimonies you heard of people who said, I couldn't live life successfully, I struggled, I had problems, I had needs, and yet Jesus took care of everything. And He helped me forgive, and He helped me be forgiven, and He helped me love when I couldn't love before. Jesus does things. He makes things happen. John, he says, it's the Lord. It's the Lord. Now, Peter is working as hard as anybody, and we know, as what John tells us, that Peter says, yes, it must be. So he grabs his outer garment, his cloak, he puts it on, and then he just dives into the water. He jumps in the water, he leaves them working with those fish, the nets, and he goes to shore because he is going to see Jesus. I read that in Jewish law of those days, that to give a greeting to someone was considered a religious act, a righteous act, and so you needed to be clothed. William Barclay, the Scottish commentator, says that it's very likely that Peter would have been working with just a loincloth on, stripped down to do the work that was necessary on the boat and fishing. But going to greet Jesus, he knew he needed to put his cloak back on. So not caring about getting it wet, he just wanted to get to Jesus. And so he goes ashore, and the disciples bring the boat. And when they get to shore, here's what they find. That Jesus has a charcoal fire going. He has bread. He has fish laid out. He has breakfast ready for them. And then he says, bring some of the fish that you have caught. And Peter goes back to the boat and helps bring the net on ashore. And it's interesting that John records that there's 153 fish, large fish, and the nets weren't broken at all. It's interesting in church history, especially in the first several centuries of Christian history, how different teachers came up with explanations for why 153 fish. Now, I'll tell you up front, I don't think that there's something magical about 153, but like there was one teacher that he said, this 153, that 100 stands for the fullness of the Gentiles. Not sure where that comes from. And then the 50 stands for the remnant of Israel who will turn to Jesus Christ. And 3 stands for the Trinity, to whom all glory is given. And that's kind of what those explanations are like. Now, there is one that kind of sounds nice. Jerome, the 4th century, says that, and that was his understanding of the day, he said 153 fish. That's how many species of fish there are in the ocean, 153. So 153 in the net, that means as you can catch people for Jesus, all kinds of fish represented, the net of the gospel will be for all kinds of people in the world. And that's not bad. But I want you to think with me about this. That here's the abundance of the fish. Here's Jesus who's able to take a little lunch, bread and fish, and break it and share it with people and feed thousands and thousands of people. Here's the Jesus who is able to do what he wants to in this world, who has breakfast ready for his followers, and he sits with them and he eats with them again. He eats with them again. In that first century that John was a part of, there were people who taught that Jesus, he couldn't really be divine and be flesh. Gnostics, we call them. They believed that spirit was good, flesh was evil. Jesus couldn't come in the flesh. But John says, no, he came in the flesh. He, after his resurrection, sat down and ate with his followers. He had fish with them. He had bread with them. He drank whatever they had to drink with them. Jesus was the risen Lord, who is the one who had been dead, no life in him, placed in a tomb, but God raised him up. And God raised him up, and he is able to eat fish and bread, talk to his followers. He's not a spirit. He's not a philosophy about life. He is the one who overcame death, and he is alive forevermore. And Jesus is the risen Lord that we can believe and trust in. I think that's an important thing to remember and understand. But then we see that Jesus has something in particular for Peter. It almost looks like he takes him aside and has a conversation with him. And in this conversation, as Jesus sits with Peter, he has some questions for him. He says to him, first of all, Peter, do you love me more than these? Now, some think that he might have even said with his hand, look around you. Here's the boat. Here's the nets. Here's the fish. Here's a living, Peter. Here's a life that you had. Here's a life that you could have again. The safety of knowing what you're going to do and how long you're going to do it and providing for your family. All these things, Peter, are you prepared to give all of this up? Are you willing to step away from a solid life in order to give yourself to my work and to my people? It could have been that it was a challenge to Peter to take that final decision, to not hold back, to say, I'm going to spend my life in service to my Lord and Savior, and I'm going to preach and share and care for Jesus' family. It may also be that Jesus looked at the rest of this group of disciples and said, do you love me more than these, Peter? Do you love me more than James and John and Nathaniel and Thomas? Because there were some times, Matthew 26:33, we read about this, where Jesus is talking to the disciples about their future and they will turn away from him. It's like they'll hide their face and say, we don't know him. That Peter makes a boast. And he says, Lord, even though these disciples, they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Do you love me more than these? And Peter says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. But then Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me more than these? 3 times. 3 times. Now, think with me about this. There's a charcoal fire that's mentioned here for the breakfast. The only other time that a charcoal fire is mentioned is in John chapter 18, where Peter and another disciple go to the courtyard of the high priest, and while they're waiting what is going to happen to Jesus, there is a charcoal fire that Peter and the others are warming their hands around. And it is that whenever Peter starts being asked by people, are you one of his? Are you one of the followers of Jesus? Are you one of those who believe in the Nazarene? You remember how 3 times Jesus is asked. Scientists say that of the senses that we have, sight, touch, all these things, that smell may be the most powerful of all, because it touches memories and it touches emotions and it really takes us back to some times in our lives. Peter is by the charcoal fire, just as he was when he betrayed, denied Jesus 3 times, and now Jesus says the 3rd time, do you love me, Peter? And Peter simply says, Lord, you know all things. And I think by that Peter means, I can't hide from you, Jesus. You know everything about me. You made me. You know who I am. You know who I've been. You know what I've done. Lord, you know everything. And Lord, I love you. I love you. And Peter hears Jesus say to him, then Peter, tend my lambs. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. He is saying to Peter, if you love me, here's how you're going to show it. I have a task for you, Peter. I have a task for you. It's not the task to build a great church. There were no church buildings of the 1st century. It's not the task to build a large congregation, because they know that God has to do all things. When the day of Pentecost comes around and 3,000 are baptized on that day, it's not because of anything that Peter and the others have done. It's because the gospel has been preached, hearts have been convicted, they turn to Jesus, 3,000 baptized, and within a short time there in Acts, 5,000 are baptized at the same time. They're not making that happen by any plan or program. They're not able to figure that out because they're this kind of Christian or that kind of Christian. They know that God can send the increase in a way that they can never provide. Jesus isn't asking Peter to be a great pastor, fundraiser, to be a great builder. He says, Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. And Peter saying yes brings him a task for the rest of his life. He's going to seek to feed those sheep.